members who are creating solutions to the issues that impact your life on the local, state, national, and international levels. So, Bishop Royster, glad to be back with you this week.
Yes, you as well.
And I know you're joining us from an undisclosed location, as you often find yourself, because you're one of the busiest organizers I know. You're in upstate New York this week?
I am. I'm actually in Buffalo, New York, yes. So just to let folks know.
One of your stomping grounds.
Yes, I actually come up here quite frequently. I work with one of our sister organizations in Faith in Action up here, and we're doing a series of trainings in New York, preparing people for the 2020 election and also the 2020 census, and helping to do organizing work to make sure that none of the people that we care about are miscounted, and that everybody who can actually gets out and votes about issues like around criminal justice reform, around raising the minimum wage, around making sure that we are not locking up undocumented immigrants, and that people actually have a chance to be able to live their full best lives. So, yep, I'm here.
Great.
Doing what I do.
Great. And, you know, I mean, it's great that you're doing that work around the census in particular, because that was a big battle that people fought to overcome them trying to add that citizenship question. But I think it left a lot of people confused and nervous about actually filling out the census, particularly among people who are undocumented.
Absolutely. You know, one of the interesting things about the census a lot of people don't realize is that undercounting, especially people of color, the most undercounted person in the country is a child of color, primarily either Latinx or African American. And the impact that that has is tremendous in terms of resources coming to the state from the federal government, whether it's for education or for health care or roads or, you know, infrastructure, for housing. And so that's why it's important that every person counts. The other piece of this is that when there's an undercount, there's actually ways that we're actually able to do, the federal government and the state government can reassign congressional districts so that communities of color actually have less representation instead of more. So we got to make sure everybody gets out and participates in the census. Everybody gets out and votes, especially in 2020. This election is going to be absolutely critical if we're going to survive in this country. And so, yeah, we're working hard at trying to do this work.
Great, great. Well, glad that you can join us even in the midst of that important work you're doing. On the boards tonight, of course, is engineer extraordinaire Troy Wilmore, who is helping us produce and engineer the show today. We thank you. And I want to just give people a preview. Tonight we have a very special guest who's in the studio, who's going to spend an hour with us. Reverend Eric Dobson, the Director of Community Engagement at Fair Share Housing Center of New Jersey, is here to talk about the success of this fantastic organization in fighting housing discrimination against poor people and black and brown people in the state of New Jersey. And I think that the work they do is phenomenal, and we don't have anything like that here over on this side of the river. And I think we have a lot to learn from the successes they've had in forcing different municipalities across the state to get apportionments of affordable housing required. So I'm really excited to have him here to share what they've been doing and where they're going. And we, encourage people, of course, as every week, to join the conversation by calling in at 215-634-8065, 215-634-8065, or toll free at 1-866-361-0900. You can join us on Facebook at onWURD. Bishop, do you have that Facebook page up? Because that's your terrain. Okay, great.
I got it up and shared it, and I am monitoring our comments on there.
Okay, great. So you'll let us know when people share some poignant comments to add to the conversation. You can also follow us on Twitter at onWURD, Instagram at onWURD, Tumblr at onWURD. And, we encourage you to call in. I think it's going to be a rich conversation tonight. We encourage folks to call in and join the conversation. So before we get to our guest, I want to just touch base with you about the situation with Ben Franklin High School and the asbestos abatement that they're trying to do there. And I just was hearing on my way in here today, I think it's a really difficult challenge for them to be behind in the dealing with the asbestos when school has already started and you have all these students who are in danger and have to be put in other buildings in order for them to take their classes and feel like they're in a healthy, safe environment, not just for the students, but also for the teachers. But on the way here today, I was hearing that they had made plans to have some of the students be at both the school district building as well as in Temple Road F. Shalom, which is the synagogue that's around the corner from Ben Franklin High School. And that this was announced, I believe, yesterday by the superintendent, but then the head of the synagogue actually came out and said, wait a minute, we haven't finished negotiation. Why are you announcing this publicly?
Oh, wow.
So I'm like, we need to get a little tighter ship running to be in the middle of negotiations about the terms and conditions that you're going to house the students in this other facility, and to not have worked that out, but still to make the announcement publicly. I'm sure the superintendent is under pressure to signal to parents and to the community that there are solutions to this really serious problem that they're facing. But, there's some dotting of I's and crossing of T's that clearly has not happened.
Yeah, that's actually really problematic. And I mean, both of us are products of the Philadelphia public school system.
Well, I didn't grow up in Philly, so no, not me. I grew up in New York.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'm a product of the Philadelphia public school system. And actually, my high school was torn down. My middle school has been torn down. My elementary school is closed. And, I think actually both the middle schools that I went to are, one's closed, the other one's torn down. I think that, there's a deep concern here about how we're thinking about educating our children. And is it just about housing them in buildings and following state mandate, or is it really about giving them the best, most rich education possible so that they can be the best citizens and human beings in the world? And so the fact that, one, they're struggling to figure this out, that they haven't gotten space. I don't know what the city's doing to jump in. I mean, we have space downtown. I mean, Ben Franklin High School is not that far from downtown. That we could have, gotten some corporate space or some offices space or whatever and converted it into school buildings, at least in the short term. I don't understand why this is taking so long and why this is so complicated. That's my frustration. In the meantime, kids are, losing out on education. Teachers are, still trying to figure out what they're going to be doing and how they're going to be leading their classroom environments, and parents are just up in arms, and they have every right to feel that way.
Yeah, and I think, your initial point there is really important. It's like the school district of Philadelphia, was totally deprived of funding for so long. It slowly started to regain that funding. And it's like we're trying to get the schools up to just a bare minimum standard of acceptability in terms of like having a building that doesn't have asbestos, having water fountains in the school that provide clean drinking water. I mean, just the very basic, that's the bare minimum that we should be trying to meet. But there's so much beyond that that is possible in terms of providing an enriching, wonderful, creative educational experience for our children that focuses on not only their mental development and their academic skills, but also their emotional well-being, their physical health and well-being, and giving them opportunities to get exposed to all sorts of not only ideas but different cultures and places and things. So it's like we're still struggling to get them to just the bare minimum of what should be expected in terms of like bare minimum of safety. It's really pathetic, and I think we have to be able to get beyond this and expect much more, expect much higher standards for our children.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah, so we're coming up on a break momentarily, and when we come back from the break, we'll be talking with Reverend Eric Dobson from Fair Share Housing Center about housing, which is, of course, a critical issue here and everywhere. And, I think nationally we are in a crisis in terms of affordable housing. You know, I was just talking to somebody, my friend in California, about the homelessness there, all of these tent cities in downtown Los Angeles and all over. Actually, every neighborhood in Los Angeles is dealing with this issue, but it's everywhere. I mean, the lack of affordable housing is a critical issue. So we're going to be getting into that and looking to our neighbors in New Jersey across the river about how they've been dealing with this successfully and seeing what we can apply here. And then I think after that, I'd love to talk about, you know, the impeachment process and what's going on there, because there's the developments are happening fast and furious. So it's like every day a month's worth of things have happened. So we got to catch up on that, and you know, we'll each take a turn on the rant box for that when we come back later on in the show. So you're listening to Solutions on Word. We'll be right back after this message.
Now, a traffic update on Word Radio.
Heavy delays continue on the Vine westbound Ben Franklin Parkway to the Schuylkill. Schuylkill westbound delayed University Avenue to Girard Avenue and Montgomery Drive and down to the Blue Route 476. If you're on Schuylkill eastbound, you're delayed 202 and all the way up to University Avenue. Vine eastbound jam Schuylkill to 95. As for 95 northbound, traffic is delayed from Naaman's Road to the Commodore Barry, stop and go from Columbus Boulevard to Bridge Street, and then from Cottman Avenue to Woodhaven Road. Southbound 95 delayed from Woodhaven Road and down to Girard Avenue, and then from the airport and down towards 320. You're also jammed up on the Blue Route 476 northbound, 95 to Route 1, and then St. David's to the tolls, and then southbound from St. David's to MacDade. The rest of your roadways are just jammed. Join the TJ Martell Foundation in the fight against leukemia, cancer, and AIDS. Your support helps facilitate cutting-edge research that will lead to more effective treatments and save more lives. Visit tjmartell.org to learn about music's promise for a cure. For more traffic information, log on to sigalert.com. I'm Michelle Taylor with your Philadelphia area traffic.
Now, a Word weather update. Here's NBC 10 First Alert meteorologist Glenn Hurricane Schwartz.
Well, it looks like a pretty nice weekend. There is a slight chance of some light rain, especially just south of the area, late Sunday and Sunday night. Otherwise, it's mostly sunny on Saturday, the high about 72. Sunday, mostly cloudy, the high 68. The dry conditions continue into early next week. For more information, you can always download the NBC 10 app.
Don't miss the Electric Magazine Show, hosted by Cody Anderson and Vicki Leach. Saturday mornings from 7 a.m. till 9 a.m. exclusively on Word Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD.
Just one more step. You got it.
You're doing great. This is the sound of a nationally ranked top rehabilitation hospital, home to the largest collection of robotics in the United States, where we continually exceed patient expectations, because no injury is too severe or too minor for our care.
There you go.
This is the sound of success. Moss Rehab. Challenge accepted.
We filmed Pennsylvania adoptive families and asked them why more people need to become foster or adoptive parents.
As a society, we have a responsibility to make sure every kid gets from being a kid to being a responsible adult.
I would encourage anybody to do it. You get so much more out of it than you expect.
Visit adoptpakids.org to watch the video, meet the kids, and learn how you can become a foster or adoptive parent.
Paid for with Pennsylvania taxpayer dollars.
Word Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD.
While Philly sleeps, nearly 3,000 commercial office cleaners and building service workers are hard at work taking care of the city's most expensive buildings. These men and women are fighting for a fair contract. This fight is about making sure Philadelphia works for everyone, not just for the rich. Shouldn't the workers of color who help create the wealth in Center City be able to take care of their families? Keep it clean, Philly. Tell building owners and cleaning contractors, don't trash black workers. This message is brought to you by 32BJ SEIU.
Need a new mattress? Stop by to see Julian, the Mattress Man, located at 7421 Stenton Avenue. You deal directly with the owner, Julian, to ensure the best prices on name brand mattresses like Sealy, Posturepedic. Call 215-424-5550. That's 215-424-5550.
Word TV. We're We're streaming live video of this conversation right now. Tune in on YouTube at onWURD or on Facebook at forward. Word TV. Black Talk Media.
Welcome back to Solutions on Word. This is Amadi Braxton, your host, along with Bishop Dwayne Royster.
Hello.
Hello. So we are blessed to have in studio with us tonight Reverend Eric Dobson, who is the Director of Community Engagement at Fair Share Housing Center, which I mentioned at the start of the show. A fantastic organization that has been doing some of the most, I think, effective work, cutting-edge work, powerful work on housing justice in New Jersey, but pretty much, all over the country. In terms of the successes they've had, they are a model for the nation. And just a little bit more about Reverend Dobson. He holds a BA from Temple University in Religion. He has extensive experience working with diverse audiences and communities. He specializes in interfaith outreach, and he's the co-founder of Open Communities, LLC, a racial integration consultant firm that works to resolve simple and complex conflicts of race, ethnicity, and socioeconomics. He also founded a nonprofit focused on youth development and education, Planting Seeds of Hope, and in 2008 served as the Pennsylvania Clergy Outreach Director for the Obama campaign. So he has a varied and rich background. So welcome to Solutions, Reverend Dobson.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Amadi. I appreciate being here.
So tell the listeners a little bit about Fair Share Housing Center and your work and the history, because I think it's a unique organization, and in some ways New Jersey has a unique circumstance in terms of its ability to fight for a fair share of the housing to be made into affordable housing across municipalities in New Jersey. So maybe you could give us a little bit of that history about what happened in Mount Laurel, the Mount Laurel Doctrine, that court case, and how that has kind of led to the development of this organization and your work.
Sure. So back in 1975, New Jersey was using local municipalities in New Jersey. There's 566 municipalities in New Jersey and over 600 school districts. So all of these municipalities have local zoning control. So back in 1975, Mount Laurel was using this zoning, and all municipalities in New Jersey was using their zoning to really build suburbanize or create suburban sprawl. And at the time, there were African Americans living in Mount Laurel. There was living in some substandard housing, and Mount Laurel at the time was a rural community, because after the Great Migration from the south to the north, which includes, we talk about migration, what was the Great Migration about, and sometimes we forget it was about the violence and lynching that was happening and the systematic killing of African Americans at that time. They moved up to the north to find some solace and find a place to live. So we're living in substandard housing. The shift in this country in terms of policy was shifting towards creating the suburbs. And the suburbs were specifically created for white folks, policy-wise. So they were intentionally excluding blacks from actually accessing to housing. So while these black folks was there, a woman named Ethel Lawrence, this case was brought, they were using their zoning to zone for 1 acre lots, and she wanted to build apartments for them to be able to stay there. And the town's position was pretty much, if you people can't afford to live here, you just have to leave. So the Southern Burlington County NAACP contacted Ethel Lawrence, which contacted several attorneys, and one of the attorneys was Peter O'Connor. And this case got argued all the way up to the New Jersey Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court ruled that each town must zone for their fair share of affordable housing. And that case was brought in 1975, and it was called the Mount Laurel Doctrine. So New Jersey has a constitutional obligation. Each town has a constitutional obligation to zone for affordable housing. So whenever they're doing any new development or redevelopment, a portion of it, usually 20%, has to be set aside for affordable housing. Now, from 1975 to 1983, the towns just ignored the Supreme Court's decision. We went back to the courts. The courts ruled again, the Mount Laurel II. In Mount Laurel II, they created the Fair Housing Act. There were some hitches in the law where some towns were able to pay their way out of the affordable housing obligation. They were called regional contribution agreements, where some of the wealthier towns in the state of New Jersey would pay our urban regions to take their allotment of affordable housing.
So that was their way to kind of get out of doing it, and they would just like essentially pay a fine or something, or pay towards.
They were paying to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. In other words, we'll pay these towns, or actually the towns themselves, was local urban mayors would take this money and use it for whatever, and that wealthy municipality would not have to build affordable housing. So again, we came together, advocates and faith leaders and civil rights groups came and got that outlawed in 2008. So that's no longer legal. But again, there are some legislators in New Jersey, Democrats, Dixiecrats, who are trying to bring the RCAs back. So over the years, we've been fighting this battle. There was a Mount Laurel 3, Mount Laurel 4 in 2015, when the courts decided that the agency that was created to help disperse the numbers wasn't doing its job, because the Christie administration had essentially attacked Mount Laurel and said the law was no longer needed. He wanted to dismantle it. So the courts ruled it should go back to the trial courts. And so in 2015, New Jersey Supreme Court ruled that each town still had an obligation, and there were 350 towns that was part of that court process. And so from 2015 to now, we have settled with about 300 of them.
So I just want to underline that, because you all have successfully brought suits and forced settlements in 300 municipalities across the state of New Jersey, out of, what did you say at the start, 500 something?
There's 566 municipalities. 350 was involved in this court process because some of our urban regions didn't have a new requirement. They had rehab requirements, because most of our urban areas had a concentration of affordable housing. So the goal was to have opportunity for people to move out of some of our urban regions and move into some of the higher opportunities where there are good jobs, good schools, good living conditions. So that was the spirit of the law.
So all you listeners out there, that's a very good track record. Suing successfully 300 municipalities to enforce this law that they have to set aside affordable housing in all new development. So talk a little bit about what you were just alluding to in your last statement about the need for people to be able to not be concentrated in urban centers where there is some affordable housing, although in Philadelphia we're feeling like there is no affordable housing, is disappearing, and in many places it is. But just the talk about the importance of the ability for people to move into areas that are in many of these towns, municipalities in New Jersey, where there are better schools and better qualities of life.
So we know historically that integration works. Now, some folks may not understand that, but integration was tried in this country during Reconstruction. So Reconstruction, there was legislation, there was bills being passed, and there were black folks elected to Congress in the 1800s. There were black folks building wealth in the 1800s, and that's when some of the folks in this country got tired of that and decided to start to dismantle that through legal means and through forced violence and killing and lynching and during that time. So we know integration works. We know if we give people of color or black folks the opportunity to compete or to live in neighborhoods where there are good schools, they'll do better. They'll get jobs. Sometimes people don't realize when you put your name and address on an application, some folks look at your zip code and they can really tell where you live, and they exclude on that purpose. So giving folks the opportunity, and matter of fact, let me back up, out of the lawsuit, the case, our sister organization, Fair Share Housing Development, actually built affordable housing in Mount Laurel called the Ethel Lawrence Development, where folks from Camden had the opportunity to move into Mount Laurel, go to Mount Laurel, the high schools, get jobs, because now they're not looking at they have a Mount Laurel zip code, so they're able to have access to higher paying jobs. They're able to stay there, a clean, beautiful place to live. Some folks have moved out of there and bought their own homes in Cherry Hill. So we're breaking generation cycles of poverty, and that's what it's all about, the opportunity to compete or have access to quality education, good jobs, and a decent place to live, access to safe spaces. And so that is important for our folks and black folks to have that opportunity. Unfortunately, in our country, we don't get that opportunity because of policy, intentionally excluding people of color through redlining, racial steering, and mortgage fraud, predatory lending. All those things are ways that they exclude African Americans from having these opportunities.
And that's another front that you guys are fighting on now. I mean, you've been so successful in terms of suing these municipalities for not abiding by the law where they have to set aside the affordable housing, so they're now being forced to do that. But so in places where there is affordable housing that has been being built, there's still additional barriers that are being put up to people even actually being able to access that. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so many times if you look at the numbers in terms of what white Americans, how many mortgages white Americans get versus what African Americans get, the numbers, it's a great disparity in terms of who have access to lending. And one of the things they used to do years ago was redlining, where we couldn't actually, they would draw red, the insurance companies and mortgage companies were on the maps, they would color code them red, yellow, red being high risk, which is usually African American communities, and in those communities we couldn't get mortgages. So this is important for accumulating wealth, because in America most of our wealth accumulation have come through housing. So if you take, Nicole Hannah-Jones and the 1619 project is a brilliant project. So if you take from 1619 to 2019, that is 400 years that our government and our system and our policies have actively worked to exclude African Americans from accumulating wealth through housing, which white Americans didn't have, they were able to accumulate wealth. So when you look at what's happening today, redlining has transitioned into predatory lending. It has transitioned into doing criminal background checks and credit score checks for excluding people from getting mortgages and allowing them to move into apartments in high opportunity neighborhoods. So these are some of the ways where this has impacted our communities in a great deal. And until we raise this issue and keep fighting and passing laws and creating and dismantling policies that do that, we would continue to lag behind in terms of wealth creation. There's a study out now that shows that the average white family in New Jersey net worth is little over $240,000.
Wow.
The average net worth for an African American family in New Jersey is about $5,000. So that's a huge wealth gap.
Yes.
And that's because systematically these policies have been in place to ensure that African Americans don't accumulate wealth. So you can imagine a family starting out having, or a family having wealth to send their kid to college, just opening businesses. That's a big wealth gap. And this is what's important for us to understand, that this was intentional. This didn't happen by accident. Our neighborhoods wasn't disinvested by accident. This was intentional.
I know that you also are organizing across the state with other civil rights organizations to put forward a black agenda for the state of New Jersey. And there's some opportunity with your so-called progressive governor, who, he's always on the hook for he's always being watched to be like, okay, how progressive are you actually going to be? But there is an opportunity, of course, after being under the reign of the Christie administration for two terms and all of the backwardsness that yielded. Especially in terms of how he dealt with Superstorm Sandy and the housing issues that came out of that, which we can talk about later on in the show. There's opportunity now around pushing forward a black agenda. So maybe on the other side of the break, because I know we're up on a break, we can talk about that and how that agenda encompasses housing, but it also encompasses a range of other issues and how they're all connected. So you're listening to Solutions on Word. We have our special guest, Reverend Eric Dobson from Fair Share Housing Center, talking about housing segregation and how to fight against it in the state of New Jersey. We will be right back.
Now, a traffic update on Word Radio.
Heavy delays continue on the Vine westbound Ben Franklin Parkway to the Schuylkill. Schuylkill westbound delayed University Avenue to Girard Avenue and Montgomery Drive and down to the Blue Route 476. If you're on Schuylkill eastbound, you're delayed 202 and all the way up to University Avenue. Vine eastbound jam Schuylkill to 95. As for 95 northbound, traffic is delayed from Naaman's Road to the Commodore Barry. stop and go from Columbus Boulevard to Bridge Street and then from Cottman Avenue to Woodhaven Road. Southbound 95 delayed from Woodhaven Road and down to Girard Avenue and then from the airport and down towards 320. You're also jammed up on the Blue Route 476 northbound, 95 to Route 1 and then St. David's to the tolls and then southbound from St. David's to McDade. The rest of your roadways are just jammed. Join the TJ Martell Foundation in the fight against leukemia, cancer, and AIDS. Your support helps facilitate cutting-edge research that will lead to more effective treatments and save more lives. Visit tjmartell.org to learn about music's promise for a cure. For more traffic information, log on to sigalert.com. I'm Michelle Taylor with your Philadelphia area traffic.
Now, a word weather update. Here's NBC 10 First Alert meteorologist Glenn Hurricane Schwartz.
Well, it looks like a pretty nice weekend. There is a slight chance of some light rain, especially just south of the area, late Sunday and Sunday night. Otherwise, it's mostly sunny on Saturday, the high about 72. Sunday, mostly cloudy, the high 68. The dry conditions continue into early next week. For more information, you can always download the NBC 10 app.
Get your money straight. Get my money right. With Solomon Jones and Akbar Hassan. Fridays on Wake Up with Word. 7 a.m. till 10 a.m. Hosted by Solomon Jones. Exclusively on Word Radio. 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. Streaming live on wordradio.com and on the Word Radio app. Be heard. Want another way to join the conversation? Follow us on social media using the hashtag onWURD. Be heard. Stay connected to Word Radio. Independent Black Media.
This is the story of a very special woman. In a matter of seconds, she turned herself into a great mathematician or an entrepreneur. Her knowledge was limitless and still is. She could also make monsters disappear, especially those that lurked in the shadows under the bed. Once, this woman put back together a teenage girl's broken heart, which had been shattered in 1,000 pieces, just by giving her a bear hug. She masqueraded as a regular person at work, but as a superhero at home. Everyone knows her as Gabriella. I still call her Mom.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need to help, complete with tips and resources at aarp.org/caregiving. A public service announcement brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Amari's Restaurant, located at 5037 Baltimore Avenue, is known for serving the best breakfast in town. Open every day at 8 a.m. with generous portions, reasonable prices, and senior discounts. Check them out at amarisrestaurant.com.
Word TV. We're streaming live video of this conversation right now. Tune in on YouTube at onWURD or on Facebook at Forward. Word TV. Black Talk Media.
Welcome back to Solutions on Word. This is your host, Amadi Braxton, along with my host, Bishop Dwayne Royster.
Hello.
Hello. And we are in the studio tonight with Reverend Eric Dobson of Fair Share Housing Center of New Jersey, talking about the history of housing discrimination, segregation, how that depletes black wealth on purpose and by design, and the fight against that. And the fight for inclusion in communities of opportunity for black and brown people in the state of New Jersey, and what we here on this side of the river can learn about that. So I think where we left off in the conversation was just getting into your work on this black agenda in the state of New Jersey. So talk a little bit about that work that you've been doing and what you've been able to push forward, and how housing is just one of many issues, but that it's almost like the hub and the wheel, and all the other issues are kind of the spokes out of that, is how I see it.
Right. So, I look at it this way. For years, we've been treating the symptoms of segregation, but not addressing segregation itself. So housing, depending on what community you live in, you have all these symptoms of segregation, over-policing, all the things that we know about. So we were coming together during the Christie administration, looking at how do we address this issue. During the end of the Christie administration, we knew we would more than likely have a Democratic governor. So some of the civil rights groups and leaders in New Jersey, black leaders in New Jersey, decided to get together and start having conversations about, instead of going to this new governor with our own individual issues, how can we come together and figure out a way to create a platform or an agenda to hold our elected officials accountable. So we met for the first time several years back in Atlantic City. And it was Richard Smith, who's the president of the New Jersey Conference NAACP, Reva Foster, who's the chairperson for New Jersey Black Issues Convention, Ryan Haygood, who's the president and CEO of New Jersey Institute for Social Justice, Elise Boddy, who's a Rutgers Law professor, who's also a board member of the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice, attorney Carolyn Chain, who's the past president of the Association of Black Women Lawyers, myself, Fair Share Housing Center, and Reverend Dr. Charles Boyer, who's the executive director of Salvation for Social Justice, and the co-convener of New Jersey Black Multi-Faith Alliance. So we had faith leaders, civil rights groups, attorneys, all coming together around a 10-point agenda to deal with the racial wealth gap, the housing issue, school segregation, African Americans being appointed to boards and commissions, reforming our criminal justice system, our youth justice system, restoring funding for a public advocate. So these are some of the things we were looking at doing, and fundamentally reshaping what black people normally do is fight amongst each other, but coming together around a united black agenda. And so far it's been phenomenal. We've been able to get youth prison closed. We've been able to have meetings on commissions around what to do with our youth justice system now. We've got an independent prosecutor bill passed, so New Jersey has an independent prosecutor. We were looking at the marijuana piece. New Jersey was looking to legalize recreational marijuana. That didn't happen, but we were looking at the social justice pieces of that, making sure that our brothers and sisters get out of jail. We're looking at the decrim bill. We're also looking at restoring voting rights. That was key, making sure that even folks in prison get their voting rights restored. So there was over 100,000 folks in New Jersey that's disenfranchised because they were in prison, probation, or parole. So these are fundamental things that we need to do to reshift and change the narrative around what social justice is, because we're talking about restorative justice.
I just heard this week, I think, that New Jersey has the highest disparity rate in terms of incarceration between blacks and whites. So that in New Jersey, the difference in terms of the number of people incarcerated is I think they said it was the largest disparity in the country, and also among adults as well as youth.
Yeah, particularly, I mean, youth is astounding that there are, the number of youth that are incarcerated in New Jersey is relatively low, but there are, compared to African American white, there are 10 white kids that are incarcerated in New Jersey, and in the whole entire state, 10.
10 in the entire state?
In the entire state.
Wow.
Yeah, and we spend about $300,000 a year to incarcerate one young person in New Jersey. So,
wow,
yeah.
Wow. And so talk about how these different issues are connected to housing, because, and also just the notion that, I mean, I think that there might be some of the nationalists out there, or the folks out there who are like, we don't need to integrate. We should, stay in our own communities. So can you speak to that sentiment a little bit too? Because I think, there is this sense that, why do we move into communities where we're not wanted or we're not respected or accepted? We should build our own. We should build our own communities and build our own wealth and have our own businesses and all of that kind of stuff. I mean, that is something that people strongly believe, and I just want to hear how you think about that.
Well, I strongly believe in that too, but then also having an opportunity for those who want to live in other communities. And let me be clear, integration has never been and never will be about having access and proximity to white people. That is not what integration is about. Integration is about having access to quality housing, education, and job opportunities. So that has never been the issue of integration. It's not about I want to be next to white people. No, it just so happened that because the governmental policies have set this up, where good schools, quality jobs, and quality housing are in these communities that they intended it to be, Well, they disinvested in our communities, and so that's what the issue is about. Yes, we should have black businesses, and we do because of having the opportunity to move into these higher opportunity communities, get better jobs. Black folks have gone on to start their own businesses. They've sent their kids to colleges. Yes, this is a part of the process. The black middle class has increased because of access to quality housing, quality schools, and good jobs. So, and of course, as you all know, they're coming back into the cities when we're dealing with this issue of gentrification, right? So we have to be smart and wise of how we go about advocating for black issues, like we're doing in New Jersey, a united black agenda that we're not pitting one person against the other, one organization against another, or competing for the same dollars. No, we're united on this front, and we want all our legislators to understand we're not coming to you for permission about, are you okay with this agenda? We're coming to our legislators and so, no, this is our agenda. I don't know what your agenda is, but this is our agenda for our folks, and that's dealing with the wealth gap and all these different issues.
I want to remind our listeners they can join the conversation at 215-634-8065 or 1-866-361-0900. And of course, you can put forth your comments on Facebook at 4WURD, that's FORWURD. And Bishop, I know you probably have a lot to say, and you want to get in on this conversation. Do you have a question or reflection you want to jump in on at this time?
Well, no, it's actually interesting. I know that through Faith in Action, we have an organization in New Jersey called Faith in New Jersey that also worked on the independent prosecutor bill. And so was excited to hear that our guest had participated in that as well, and with a lot of others that were working on trying to get that passed. A couple of challenges coming up. First of all, online, Facebook, Raphael Suleiman and Gary Bryant are going back and forth and certainly have some thoughts about housing in New Jersey. I guess I would just want to ask, Reverend, the question about what is the imagination for housing in New Jersey? What does that look like when we're actually able to make sure that everyone has access to decent housing in various communities? A lot of the communities, one of the things that Gary and Raphael were bringing up was that Camden's even becoming gentrified now. So where are the folk from those areas going? So what does whole housing look like in Jersey?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So one of the things I think I need folks to understand in terms of housing, we have underproduced housing in this country, period. Particularly housing that's affordable. So when you underproduce affordable housing, that make market rate housing go up higher. It's supply and demand. So what we want to do is make sure everyone have access to quality housing. Even, the Mount Laurel Doctrine includes very low income. That's down to the 30% area median and below. Low income, housing for those with special needs, senior housing, housing for veterans, housing for homelessness. So folks who are homeless. So a good housing policy encompasses all of that we make sure we have quality housing for every constituent in New Jersey and not just for the wealthy, because New Jersey is one of the wealthiest states in the nation. It has one of the highest per capita of income earners in the nation. And folks like to tout in New Jersey. I hear this all the time, that New Jersey is one of the most diverse states in the nation, which is true, but it's also one of the most segregated. Our school systems in New Jersey is one of the most segregated school systems in the entire country, more so than in the South. So housing plays a key role in that. So if you can have housing in our urban communities that are gentrifying, making sure there's an affordable housing ordinance in place, that the ordinance is being enforced, that when they build luxury housing in gentrifying communities, that a portion of that housing is for low and very low income people, and making sure that housing our folks have access to that housing and not being excluded. And those who want to live in the suburbs have the opportunity to live in the suburbs just as much if they want to stay in the cities. So it's about opportunity for us, and having that diversity of housing stock will give our folks the opportunity to either stay in our urban regions or move into suburbs, if they want to, first suburbs or exurbs, which is the outer ring suburbs.
Yeah, I mean, I guess a question, Reverend Dobson, for like Camden and Newark, places like that across the state, even Atlantic City to some extent, is there a plan as the neighborhoods are being gentrified to be able to provide resources to make sure folk that want to stay in those areas are able to do so?
Yeah, so let's take Newark, for example. So Newark, we helped draft an affordable housing for the city of Newark. So now Newark has an inclusionary zoning in place when they're doing these market rate and luxury rate units, that there's a requirement for those units to have affordable housing in them as well. We haven't seen as much, and I'm curious to see any information that anyone may have about Camden. We haven't seen Camden gentrifying at any rate in terms of compared to Philadelphia or Newark or Jersey City. Camden is still is on that cusp of folks. There are some political aspects to Camden that is a whole separate issue because there are folks that control Camden. That's a topic in the discussion for a night in itself, as well as Atlantic City, because Atlantic City, the most profitable, desirable places in Atlantic City or along the shore area, is the city doesn't own that. That is state-controlled lands. New Jersey Casino Redevelopment Authority controls that. So, when you look at Atlantic City, that's another case study in itself, because the tax ratables and opportunities there, the city have very little resource and very little leverage because the state controls it. So that's another issue, a dynamic that when we talk about Camden and Atlantic City. Newark is a place that has an inclusionary zoning ordinance in place. So does Hoboken, which we help draft a new ordinance for them. Jersey City, the council president and the city councilwoman Joyce Waterman had introduced an ordinance for Jersey City, and the mayor introduced his ordinance. And the mayor, of course, Jersey City has no interest in really providing housing for the folks that have been there for years. His ordinance is more for the higher income earners, opposed to what the council president and councilwoman Joyce Waterman has in place. And they had some help from us helping put that together too. So we're trying to get Jersey City to pass the ordinance. We're trying to get Asbury Park to pass the ordinance. So these are the communities that are rapidly gentrifying in New Jersey.
No, go ahead.
No, I know we have to go for a break in a minute, but I guess part of my question is, even as I'm thinking about Philadelphia, and I mean, I'm sure you're seeing this in Jersey as well. The joke in Philadelphia is that Philadelphia is becoming the sixth borough of New York City, and that that there are people from New York that are moving to Philadelphia because it's so much cheaper. But as a result of them moving with their larger incomes, it's actually driving housing prices up. In sections across Philadelphia. I mean, we have people moving to Fishtown and Kensington and, areas in West Philly that are close to the Amtrak station, because it's actually easier for some folk to live in Philly to get to work in Manhattan than it is for them to live in Queens or Brooklyn or Bronx and get into the city to be able to go to work every day. And so I part of it, I guess, when you're looking at northern Jersey in particular, and I'm sure that Newark is probably experiencing some of this as well. Like, what is the challenge? Because you talked about fighting with the municipalities, the 300 municipalities, to prevent them from basically buying out of being able to do housing, to do low-income or moderate-income housing. We have the similar problem here in Philadelphia, where developers who are developing all these new skyscrapers and these really expensive facilities are basically able to buy their way out of having to provide moderate income housing or low income housing in their properties. There was a big fight about a year and a half ago, property, and actually not too far from where the station is, that was built, that they did not want to have to put the two apartments in that would be required to be able to meet the housing laws in Philadelphia. And then it became this whole issue about them basically being able to pay the city for that. Or in other places, like in New York City, we've seen this, and probably will happen here in Philadelphia if we don't address this soon. You have these brand new, beautiful buildings that are being built. They put in two house properties for people with low incomes, and they give them a separate entrance and not access to all the amenities in the property. So, would love to hear what you all are thinking about that as well, and what are some of the solutions that we can do to try to address that.
Let's take that his answer on the other side of this break, and hopefully we can get some callers to join the conversation as well. By calling 215-634-8065. I want to hear you all calling in. Now, I know that people care about this issue, so I'd love to hear what the callers are thinking as well. So we'll take the answer to that question on the other side of the break. You're listening to Solutions on Word. We'll be right back.
Brothers and sisters,
Don't miss The Source. Weekdays 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. on Word Radio, WordRadio.com, and the Word Radio app.
Positive encouragement will be yours at the 10th Annual Mothers and Daughters Conference on Saturday, October 19th from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. at Temple University's Student Faculty Center at 3340 North Broad Street. This free conference will positively educate, empower, and encourage mothers, daughters, and all women to support each other through life's awkward journeys. Continental breakfast and lunch will be served. Register at cegmdd19.eventbrite.com or call Gwen at 267-736-8801.
Join Word Radio for the EcoWord Environmental Justice Summit, Sunday, October 20th from 2 p.m. till 5 p.m. at Bartram's Garden, 5400 Lindbergh Boulevard. This unique green event will feature lightning talks about the connections between race, income, and the environment, locally, nationally, regionally, and especially in Philadelphia. Featuring John Francis, author of Planet Walker and The Ragged Edge of Silence, Janine Kayembe, founder of Life Do Grow Farm, Zuline Mayfield, environmental activist, Joanne Douglas, program manager of the Watershed Interpretation and Youth River Program at Bartram's Garden, and a special talk and musical performance by Ill-Fated Natives. The summit will also feature Wasted, an EcoWord photo exhibit by Zamani Feeling, a livelihood green sector job resource exhibit, and a healing drum circle by Music Over Matter. You must RSVP. Register today at wordradio.com or call 215-425-7875. Supported by the Wincoat Foundation. Word Show on the Go. Tell us where you'd like to see the rapping professor, Dr. Aaron Smith, bring the Word Show on the Go team next. Visit wordradio.com. Click the Word Show on the Go banner and let us know about your community event, big news in your community, or an issue you'd like to see addressed. You can also catch up on the latest episode of Word Show on the Go or binge watch previous episodes. It's Word Show on the Go with the rapping professor, Dr. Aaron Smith, exclusively on wordradio.com. Word Show on the Go is funded in part by the Facebook Journalism Project Community Network.
This is the story of a very special woman. Just a few knew about her superpowers. In a matter of seconds, she turned herself into a great mathematician. She masqueraded as a regular person at work, but as a superhero at home. Everyone knows her as Gabriella. I still call her Mom.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need to help, complete with tips and resources at aarp.org/caregiving. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Now, with more clarity, this is Word Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD Philadelphia. Streaming live at wordradio.com. Word TV. We're streaming live video of this conversation right now. Tune in on YouTube at onWURD or on Facebook at Forward. Word TV. Black Talk Media.
Welcome back to Solutions on Word. This is your host, Amani Braxton, along with your other host, Bishop Dwayne Royster.
Hello.
And in the studio, you've been hearing us having a rich discussion about housing and affordable housing with our guest, Reverend Eric Dobson of Fair Share Housing Center of New Jersey. And Bishop, you asked a very provocative question right before we had to go to a break about the situation for housing here in Philadelphia and the lack of affordable housing and all the new development that's happening without any or extremely minimal cutouts for lower income people to live, and also the gentrification. Philly being the 6th borough of New York now in terms of all these people moving here, driving up housing costs in traditionally moderately income neighborhoods where people could afford to live. So, Reverend Dobson, you want to address that?
Yes, I can't wait to address that, because this is one of the most disappointing things that I come across in a city where I was born and raised. I grew up here, that has the highest poverty rate of any large city in this country. Again, the city of Philadelphia has the highest poverty rate in any large city in the country, and yet we have one of the weakest affordable housing ordinances in this country. So you're absolutely correct. When you drive across the Ben Franklin Bridge and you see that luxury building up there, and that developer was able to pay its way out of their affordable housing obligation, that's because the ordinance here is weak. The city, elected officials in this city can, if they have the political will, can get together, and we'll be more than willing to help with this, to draft a more stronger inclusionary zoning ordinance where developers would not allow to be able to do that. That's what we've done in New Jersey. It's a simple fix. It can be done. If the city elected officials in this city cared about the large percentage of poverty that exists in this city, they would do something about it. Unfortunately, they're not. It can be done. We can help with that, but all it takes is a strong inclusionary zoning ordinance that would not allow developers to pay their way out of doing their obligation, which this is a huge problem in this city. I can't believe that we have allowed this to happen in gentrification and allowed this to happen in this city with a large number of folks living in poverty in this city, and has been doing it for over 20 years. This is not a new thing in Philadelphia. Philadelphia poverty rate has been one of the largest for the last 20 years, so there is no excuse for the city to allow this to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was saying, during the break, I was saying that, we don't have the history that you have in New Jersey in terms of having a Mount Laurel Supreme Court case that requires every municipality to have, to set aside a portion of all new housing development that is a significant portion that is geared toward lower income people and to be affordable housing. I have Cole in Fairmount on the line who wants to join the conversation. Cole, hello.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for calling.
Thank you. And you and Reverend Royster. I'm a member of the Economic Justice Committee of the Power Organization, and I attended just as an observer on last evening from 3 to 7 p.m. City Council had a special committee hearing looking at what they're going to do with all the surplus money that they say is going to be hitting the budget as a result of all this construction. And the people with the subcommittee on housing, headed by Sister Mary Scullion, were talking about having public-private partnerships. And once again, these are just recommendations to the council, but the president of the council was there together with a lot of the city council members. So I would hope that maybe we can get together a proposal to give to them and call their bluff that they're talking about wanting to do these things.
Yeah, I think one of the unique positions, opportunities that the city of Philadelphia does have, each council member controls zoning in their own district. So each council member can require that any development coming into their district require a percentage of it to be affordable. Our local city council folks have a lot of power. So we can look at the laws around and looking at the way to get that done. But the city can do something about this, just not doing it.
And I think too often it's like the individual district, the city council people in individual districts, they are close up and buddy-buddy with developers, like major developers who operate in their district. And, maybe they're making a lot of campaign contributions. I don't know. But that's part of the problem, is there's too much cozying up between the developers and politicians in this city that's keeping the status quo, where certain people are getting rich and other people are losing out and staying in generational poverty. Thank you, Cole, for calling in with that comment. Really useful input into the conversation. And I invite others to join in at 215-634-8065, or you can, provide your comments on Facebook at forward, FORWURD. So how can we borrow some of that fair share housing magic and apply it here in Philadelphia?
Well, we're, of course, we're so busy in New Jersey, so it's the capacity issue for us. But we would love to come to Philadelphia and lend our expertise to get this done. I can't reiterate more how concerned I am for the level of poverty in this city and why our officials haven't done anything about it. Well, we continue to build and give zoning permits and variance for density without requiring affordable housing. I can't stress enough that's a shame. It's disgusting, and I would say that knowing if you are an elected official in this city and you know how high our poverty rate is, and you can do something about it in terms of housing, and you do nothing, I don't think you should be elected again. I really don't.
And there's also the issue of the tax abatement that is allowed for developers to have 10 years of no taxes.
Yeah.
Which basically are being subsidized by those of us who live in the areas where those developments, the new development is happening, that is making our taxes go up. It's just terrible. I mean, in my neighborhood in West Powelton, which is a very quickly gentrifying neighborhood, it's constant construction, constant, as me, somebody with a chronic lung condition, health condition with breathing, constant particulate matter in the air that I'm breathing in because there's constant construction 24/7 year-round since I've been in this neighborhood, which is about 3 years now. And every month at my community association or meeting, there are, 4, 5, 6 different development projects that we have to assess and, put in our vote about whether we want them there or not. Many of them are completely inappropriate for the neighborhood. Multiple units, high rises going in this neighborhood that is has the highest typical building there historically is 3 stories, if that. The parking can't be accommodated. All of that, and all of the folks who are not housing experts, we're just people who live in the neighborhood, are expected to be able to voice our concern, and we find out that in fact that doesn't even really matter because the developer can go to the zoning board and undercut what we say anyway. So it's a mess.
And to be clear, on the tax abatement issue, and what you'll find, and city officials don't want to talk about this, or other folks don't want to talk about this, these folks get these tax abatements for 10 years, and before their tax abatement comes into play, they up and sell that property for a profit and move to the suburbs. So not only isn't the city getting the taxes, they're losing residents, and you already push the long-term residents out, and you're getting nothing in return. And part of the challenge is, even when you talked about the aesthetics of these buildings, you have these developers who have no history and no knowledge of these neighborhoods. The city of Philadelphia is one of the oldest, it's just where the birthplace of the nation started. So they build these places that's an eyesore, that has no connection to the history of that neighborhood. And and that's a shame. And the folks in that neighborhood, along with their city council, can require these buildings to look exactly like the buildings that already exist in those neighborhoods. That can be done. In certain neighborhoods, I don't know if you guys know that, if you travel across this country, you go to certain communities, you look at their McDonald's, it looks nothing like the McDonald's that it looks in some of our neighborhoods, because they are required to make the building look like the buildings in that communities. That can be done. And that's, I'm sorry I'm raising my voice about this, but it pains me to see what's happening in the city.
No. We like raised voices here. We have another caller on the line, Maurice from Southwest. Maurice, you want to join the conversation?
Oh, definitely. I've been crying about this situation way before the election, right after Nutter left. But nobody's paying attention. People got to understand, when they make the plans for the city, these are 20-year plans. This ain't just happened yesterday. I remember when they first took over the bottom, who was Janie Blackwell's area. She claims that why is everybody against her, but she has one of the most gentrified areas in the city. We got
that's where I live, in her old district.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying, look, a lot of people don't know she has been using eminent domain on some properties that a lot of people don't know about. That's going on there. When you asked her what was affordable housing on this radio station, she said 240,000. I don't know too many people that's an average person in Philadelphia can afford to spend 240, and if they're going to spend that kind of money, they're going to want some land. So what I'm saying is, all you got to do is go to city council and just ask them what they want to answer. How much is a quart of milk? They have no idea. Where do they shop at? They got a car. They psyched us with the soda tax. Only poor people's paying this soda tax. Anybody that got a brain will know they will go outside the city to buy any beverages. Everybody knows it's not even a sugar tax. The diet sodas are taxed and some juices are taxed. See, we're not paying attention. They're doing it right in front of our faces. Look at 46th and Market. How can the city afford to lose $42 million and look at us in the face and say, well, we didn't want it there? Think about that. Nobody's hopping out. I'm almost having a heart attack just listening to your show because everything you're saying is up to date and on time. I wish more people would listen and it would be broadcast more of what you're saying to the general public. And we got to understand one more thing. Only the enlightened people listen to URD. What about the ones that's lost in the desert out there that don't listen to the radio? The only thing they look at is Rachel Maddow and ABC's morning show, which has nothing to do with black people. So we better wake up because we got 4 more years of hell because Kenny got 4 more years to go, and we have nothing to stand for. That's all I wanted to say.
All right. Thank you, Maurice. We can always count on you to keep it real. Bishop, I know you wanted to get in. You had some comments and thoughts.
Oh, yeah. It's probably going to be rant number 1 of the night.
Okay. That's all right.
I mean, I think we have to have a real honest conversation that the puppet masters of developers who are, generating housing policy for the city of Philadelphia at their core are racist, right? They are working on developing real estate properties that are going to attract rich white millennials and those coming in from the new tech industries that are going to be coming into the Philadelphia area. It is the city's desire to cater to them. I think believing somehow or another the way that we drive out poverty is not to address the poverty that already exists inside the city. It is basically to try to attract people to come here, stay here, live here with their degrees already in place, and to raise the average wage, the median wage in the city, and to basically transform neighborhoods. I pastored a church in the eastern side of North Philadelphia over near 5th and Diamond. And when I went there back in 2003, 2004, you couldn't give away a house over in those neighborhoods. Often they were shells. Now, those same shells that the city was trying to give away have been redeveloped and are selling for $300,000 and $400,000. The folk in that community are unable to afford, so they're bringing in other folk. So this isn't even just about new development. It's also about rehab properties as well that are being used as leverage. The city packages, sometimes through the vacant lot program and other programs throughout the city, they package buildings together. They give them to developers for virtually next to nothing. I mean, Kenyatta Johnson got in trouble for this not too long ago. This was a big issue that came up with a developer that he had a relationship with that he basically sold him a property for less than the market value. These folk get these properties. They flip them. They make hundreds of thousands of dollars off the properties. And then the folk that move into the community come in. They're not from the area, don't have an appreciation for the culture of the community that exists, but because they're bringing money, even though the money that they're bringing, because usually there's some tax abatement tied to these properties, they're not actually benefiting the city one way or the other, and they're doing damage to the communities that have historically been Latino, historically been African American, historically have been in the hands of folk that struggled. It was actually interesting, in the year 2000, the city of Philadelphia had the highest level of low-income home ownership of any city in the country, and that is no longer the truth. Because we have managed to get properties, take them away from people because of, owing $400 in back taxes to the city of Philadelphia. They've taken the properties, and they've sold them off, packaged them together, and they've given them to developers. And now we see communities like South Philadelphia, where my mom grew up, or in East North Philly over near Diamond, in that area where Northern Liberties is pushing its way down further, in Kensington and Fishtown and places like that where poor white folk live, all being transformed into these sort of upper middle class bastions of bourgeoisie, food and other, type activities that's basically trying to transform and chase the people that have been long-term Philadelphians right out.
And I just have a quick case in point about that. I talked to a Puerto Rican woman who grew up in North Philadelphia, who had historically family owned the house that she grew up in had been in her family for like 3 generations. And next door developer that was building a brand new property next door, in the process damaged their house and made it inhabitable. And then they can't afford to actually purchase another house in that neighborhood, so she and her family, who've been there for generations, have been displaced. So, I mean, that's a particularly egregious case, but it just reinforces the point that people can't stay in their historic neighborhoods and are being pushed out. Well, any final thoughts from our guests? We know we're up on the end of your time with us. We wish we could talk about this for hours and hours with you. We'll have to have you back maybe when we get some politicians with some gumption around getting actually an effective ordinance that serves the interests of lower income people in this city. Maybe we can have you back on to talk about that. Any final thoughts in terms of what we should be doing to model the work that you've been doing in New Jersey?
Yeah, I think, elections have consequences, and Philadelphia, we have elections here, and your local city council have the power to do something about this issue, can address the issue of poverty, and I think we need to hold our elected officials accountable. And unfortunately, a lot of our elected officials look like us and doing us dirty. And I don't know how else to say it, but I mean, they look like us. They're doing us dirty. So Malcolm would say you're a traitor to your race. Now that's not me saying. Malcolm said that. I didn't. Just so y'all be clear. Malcolm would say that's what Malcolm would say. And it's hard to see a city with such a high poverty rate and the history here, and allow this to continue year after year after year. And we do have the power to do something about it. That's disheartening. It really is. So,
yeah. Well, maybe if we can elect our Working Families Party candidates, maybe they can take this up. Thank you so much for coming in and spending a full hour with us, Reverend Eric Dobson, the Director of Community Engagement at Fair Share Housing Center of New Jersey, doing fantastic work in the state of New Jersey that we can replicate here if we get it together to make it happen. And he will help us do it. I think we could maybe pull him away to consult with us on how to make it happen here too. So thank you very much for coming in. We appreciate you and appreciate all the work you're doing and the model that you're creating for all of us.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Sure. You've been listening to Solutions on Word. We'll be right back after the break.
Attention Word audience, do you know that PECO can provide you with more information about your energy usage through their smart meter program? The new smart meter, also known as electric meters, and the PECO interactive website helps to give you more information on understanding how to best use energy and how to save energy and money. Smart meters also provide quick support to local fire departments and other officials during an emergency. And you can get faster, more convenient service when moving out of your home or into a new home. Smart meters can also identify potentially dangerous situations like tampered meters and reroute power to restore faster service in the event of an outage. Visit PECO.com and search smart meters to learn more about signing up to save energy and money. PECO, powering our communities.
What's up, everyone? I know you know the word. No, not the station, but this word, J-O-B, that is. And our friends at Amoroso's Baking Company are hiring right now. Amoroso's has been baking the delicious bread in our community for over 100 years, and they want you on their team today. They're currently hiring for production, packaging, and sanitation. The old and the young love Amoroso's, and they're hiring right now. Check it out. They're offering fair pay and provide health and dental prescription plans after 90 days of employment. They're also looking to hire part-time and seasonal employees as well. Entry-level candidates are encouraged to apply. Call Scott Drummond at 856-754-0360 or visit amorosos.com for more details.
Listen live at wordradio.com.
Word family, you are not alone.
October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and Word Radio wants you to know that those who suffer from this disease,
their families,
and friends
are not alone.
Word Radio encourages everyone to fight. That's why we're launching Fight for Word, an awareness campaign aimed at bringing attention to early detection,
support groups,
prevention,
and treatment of breast cancer.
This month, we're shining a light on those in the fight. Plus, all month long, when you start or renew your 4Word membership, you'll get a very special pink Fight 4Word t-shirt.
Keep the conversation going with the hashtag FightForward.
And share inspirational messages, stories, and words of encouragement.
Make a difference.
Together.
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 Together. Together.
Together. Let's fight forward.
For more information or to start or renew your 4Word membership, call 215-425-7875.
Word TV. We're streaming live video of this conversation right now. Tune in on YouTube at onWURD or on Facebook at 4Word. Word TV. Black Talk Media.
Join Word Radio on October 20th from 2 to 5 p.m. at Bartram's Garden for an interactive conversation about environmental racism, how it impacts our daily lives, and what we as a community can do about it. Presenters include John Francis, author of Planet Walker and The Ragged Edge of Silence, Janine Kayimbi, founder of Life Do Grow Farm, Zuline Mayfield, Chester City environmental activist, Joanne Douglas, Youth River Program Manager at Bartram's Garden, and featuring a special musical presentation by environmental justice band Ill-Fated Natives. Environmental Justice Band, I didn't know they had those. That's cool. It's not just talk, so you can also find out about job opportunities and resources as part of our Livelihood Job and Resource Fair. Some of the companies that will be on site include Serenity Solar, that's S-O-U-L-A-R, Serenity Solar, Brown's ShopRite, Clean Water Action, Pennsylvania Horticultural Society, and more. Additionally, we will debut Wasted, our eco-word photo exhibit by Zamoni Feelings, looking at the trash crisis in our country and our city. And we'll have a healing drum circle by Music Over Matter with a special tribute to breast cancer survivors. Come out next Sunday, October 20th, from 2 to 5 p.m. at Bartram's Garden and learn how our community is uniquely impacted by climate change, locally, regionally, nationally, and globally. RSVP today at wordradio.com or call 215-425-7875. The EcoWord Environmental Justice Summit is supported by the Wincote Foundation and Broken Philly, a project of Resolve Philadelphia. You are back with Solutions on Word with Amadi Braxton and Bishop Dwayne Royster.
Hello.
Hello. So, I just want to say that before we go to a couple of callers, I just want to give a shout out to Maurice, because Maurice did not. Maurice was. I felt he was more gentle today, which means that we had a very good guest. I hear you laughing in the background. So we appreciate you, Maurice, and our guest appreciated you as well. All right, let's go to a couple other callers we have waiting. Ron in Northeast.
Good evening. How you doing?
Good evening. How are you?
We had a mayor who was in office one time. I think his name was John Street.
Uh-huh.
I think he got a lot of flack behind the comment he made when he said black folks are now running the city. Well, the black folks who are running the city now, and I'm talking about city council, they need to be removed, every single one of them, because those same folks that are running the city are the same folks that are doing dirt and hurt to their own people. It's a shame. The highest poverty rate, school system is in a shambles. You know what I mean? I remember when I went to school, I graduated from high school in 1971 with a 9th grade reading level. And I didn't know that until I went into the military, to the Air Force. And from the exams that I took with them, even though I passed the exam to get into the Air Force, my reading comprehension and my math scores weren't all that good. So I had to take remedial courses while I was in the military to bring myself up to a 12th grade level. And it's a shame.
So you're saying these are not new problems?
No, these are not new, but these are old problems. It's just that they're worse. They have become worse, and I agree with. I want to echo what you guys were saying, even your guests and Maurice. You know what I mean? But I would be, preach to the choir, and your sentiments are my sentiments. There's something that we can do, and that's to vote them out of office, from the mayor on down, president of city council on down, get them all out of office, vote them out of office, and start from scratch, because this is a doggone shame. It's a shame. That's all I got to say, short and sweet.
Thank you very much, Ron, for calling in and sharing your thoughts. All right, let's go to Khalil in South Philly. Khalil?
Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Great.
What's on your mind?
Great guest. But one of the things I really feel really upset about is that particularly the black politicians. It's been in the news all summer. This whole election cycle. We're talking about this tax rate, and the Inquirer, Pew Research, and a couple of other people have done studies. The city denied the study, but when they did their own study, they found out that the study was actually accurate, where the properties that were considered low income, that had the lowest value, was paying tax rates at 229% than the median rate. And as you went up the economic ladder, the tax rate became lower. So the people who were paying over $1 million for properties were only paying 90% of the average tax rate. And I heard your guest say that Philadelphia had one time had the largest number of low-income housing. That's how it was done. And the only politician who ever said anything about it was David O. when he called Rob DeBoe, who's behind a lot of this stuff, a criminal. And this is actually a crime, not a crime, but a violation of the state constitution. Now, they also did the same thing to the commercial and industrial property owners. And a group called the Land Title Association sued the city of Philadelphia in their behalf to get their tax dollars back. They wanted $68 million, but they won the judgment for $47. So we have to look at that model because they won because the state said that the tax rate has to be uniform throughout the city. So we have to organize around the fact that low-income housing was targeted by the city of Philadelphia, thus breaking the state constitution. And we need to win a judgment on the behalf of poor and working people in the city. The rich did it, and this is what they just used the law that's already on the book. But in Philadelphia, and I've been working in this system for over 25 years, the laws don't matter. We have to understand that civil law, a lot of us are paying attention to the criminal justice system, but we're forgetting civil law is doing more damage to our communities. And right now in Flint, you have gentrification by death. The people who were poisoned by the water, they're waiting for them to die. This was on the Real News, which comes out of Baltimore. And you know, we have politicians, they're sitting back and acting like these things aren't happening, but they are. And this was all in the paper, how poor people were targeted for a higher tax rate, 229% over the median rate. That's unconscionable, but we let it go.
Yeah. Thank you, Khalil, for that comment. And I think, you know, I think that it's expensive to be poor. I mean, that's how it is in not just in housing, but in you know, in a lot of realms of economic daily life for people who are on the lower end of the income spectrum. The costs that are put on them in order to get by are astronomical if you look at it comparatively, percentage-wise, to those who are wealthy. They have to pay more in fees. They have to have higher interest rate if they want to get credit. They get a higher interest rate if they want to try to get a mortgage. They're given a higher interest rate. You know, the taxes, you know, like Maurice was saying, and like, of course, you've always said, Bishop Royster, in terms of the sugar tax or the soda tax, and all of the other ways that poor people are nickel and dimed in order to just survive, and the wealthy get away with not having that and end up, in terms of their net cost of living, it's a lot lower percentage-wise. I mean, I was doing a fundraising training because I have a background in fundraising. Poor people donate more percentage-wise of their income to charity than wealthy people do. Wealthy people have more money to give in terms of total amount, but in terms of the percentage of their wealth that amount represents, it's actually lower than the percentage of their wealth that poor people give away to charity. Just another side note. Anyway, that was my mini rant. Bishop, you have any comments?
No, it was good. I mean, our policies are really wrong, and we drive people into poverty. The reason we haven't been able to break the cycles of poverty is because when you take a look at the increases in taxes in Philadelphia over the last few years, including real estate tax, sugar tax, we just made it more costly for people to be able to live in the city of Philadelphia. And we're not adding additional services to help support those people that are struggling the deepest in our city. We're not doing anything to help them, be able to find, better solutions to live, better job opportunities, making sure that we're providing training programs. We're not doing any of that. We're not doing anything extra. We're extracting more, but we're not giving more. But what we're doing is extracting wealth from poor folk, and then we're giving rich people tax breaks so that they can do what they have to do in the city. We got to reverse this process and think very differently about how we're doing it, and we got to stop the oligarchs in our city from having puppet master control over our politicians.
That's right. We have another caller on the line, Miguel in Mount Airy.
Hello, how are you?
Hi, Miguel. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm basically echo the same sentiments that everybody's been calling in and what you're saying. I graduated from Dobbins in 1991, so I might have been on the tail end of Philadelphia having like a really good school system. When we had the ability, I believe, I say at least in every section of the city, kids had schools where they could walk to in their neighborhood and get an education. As to, fast forward to 2020, and the average for Philadelphia schools on a scale from 1 to 10 is a 2 or a 3. That's across the city. And people are basically busing their kids or taking transportation all over the city in search of just a basic, decent education, and the system has totally failed, and I believe it was done on purpose. Because if you look at who's occupying Philadelphia's public schools, it's all part of this same gentrification plan. If you have children coming out of schools, with a substandard education, what are their possibilities and prospects for the future to be able to stay here and thrive, or just do anything, live a decent life? It's not good. And like you said, this is an oligarchy, a corporatocracy, a plutocracy. It's not a democracy. All our politicians, those city council people, they don't work for the citizens of Philadelphia. They work for real estate developers. They work for road contractors. You look at these guys who are paving these roads, they're breaking up perfectly good concrete every year and putting concrete down again. And we're just sitting here watching it. All of these companies, if you look at them, a lot of them are from outside of the city, and they don't hire any black people. Road jobs are sustainable jobs that last forever. The roads constantly need repair. You can work on these jobs and buy a home, send your kids to college, vacation well, buy a second home. And we're not on. If we're on those job sites, we're flagging. We're not doing skilled jobs. So this is all part of how the Democrats and Republicans parties are working together to put the okie doke on the poor people and the working people in Philadelphia. And the last thing I want to say is, everybody in the city and every district has to find a regular, everyday citizen and put these city council people out of a job. You have to get clean house in city council. That's job number one. Find people now, find how to get your paperwork straight, because they will get you on the paperwork technicality, get you off the ballot. They're criminals. You have to get rid of everybody, including the mayor, your committee people. All these people have to go. I mean, we got to get on the ball and take action.
Thank you. Well, that seems to be the theme. Thank you, Miguel. That seems to be the theme of all the callers tonight. Clean out city council. City council is not representing the interests of black and brown people, low-income people in this city. It's representing the interests of the corporate interests, the business interests in the city. And it has created a situation of multi-decade generational poverty in this city. and it's not getting any worse. I mean, it's not getting any better. It's getting worse. We're up on our last break of the evening. You are listening to Solutions on Word. We'll be right back after this break.
Don't miss The Source. Weekdays 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. on Word Radio. WordRadio.com and the Word Radio app. Support independent black media and join the Forward movement now at 215-425-7875 or visit wordradio.com.
We filmed 15 Pennsylvania kids who were all waiting to be adopted and asked what having a family and permanent home would mean to them.
I want a family just to accept me for who I am, to be there just to support me whenever I'm needing it.
To be matched with a family would be amazing. I won't be in a system all the time.
Visit adoptpakids.org to watch the video, meet the kids, and learn how you can become a foster or adoptive parent.
Paid for with Pennsylvania taxpayer dollars.
Word family, this is Sarah Lomax Reese, President and CEO of Word Radio. Join me on Friday, November 1st from 5:30 to 7 p.m. for the next installment of the Walter P. Lomax Jr. MD Speaker Series, Struggle and Progress, a conversation on Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman. I'm excited to interview two of the leading scholars on Douglass and Tubman, Dr. C. James Trotman, founding director of the Frederick Douglass Institute, and Dr. Erica Armstrong Dunbar, author of She Came to Slay, The Life and Times of Harriet Tubman. This powerful discussion will be held at the Barnes Foundation as part of their First Friday festivities and will precede the premiere of Ruth Naomi Floyd's Frederick Douglass Jazz Works, a suite of music created to honor the legacy of the famed activist and abolitionist. You do not want to miss this amazing event, which happens to fall on the same day as the release of the new Harriet Tubman movie. Space is limited. For ticket information, go to wordradio.com or call 215-425-7875.
In partnership with the Barnes Foundation, sponsored by Pico and Comcast NBC 10. Word TV. We're streaming live video of this conversation right now. Tune in on YouTube at onWURD or on Facebook at Forward. Word TV. Black Talk Media.
Welcome back to Solutions on Word. You're listening to your host, Amadi Braxton, along with your other host, Bishop Dwayne Royster.
Hello.
And Bishop, we have a lot of people who want to talk about this issue. We have Gary from Southwest on the line. Hi, Gary.
Hello, Word family.
Hello.
I'm trying to think what I could add because this conversation, man, everybody's saying the same things that I feel inside.
Mm-hmm.
So it's you have a turkey, right? The turkey has two wings, but it's the same body. That's how we're disrespected in this town. We've been a Democratic town, and we feel the Democratic Party is in our corner. But that's not the truth because it's all about money at the end of the day. And these council people, they work, as you said, for these special interest groups. Just like that organization, ALEC. That group goes and petitions or politicians that pass certain legislation that benefits their businesses. And what really bothers me the most, we'd have, in this town, we have a majority black city. And all these black politicians and our people are still suffering. And when they come out with their little T-shirts and I'm so tired. That's insulting to me, and we should look at it as that. It's insulting because they have not done anything to better our condition. I'm thinking about that school, Ben Franklin. All these schools have lead and asbestos in them, okay? So you've known this for years and years. So now you get a school board superintendent from Prince George's County. And if you know anything about Prince George's County and their school, they weren't too happy with him either. Okay? So he's here. He's making $300,000 and some odd $1,000 a year, and our schools are in this condition. And you mean to tell me you can't give us an explanation as to why our children have to go in these poison buildings on a daily basis? And our other, I don't know, I'm just frustrated right now. Our politicians, man, they look like us. They're not doing anything for us.
I think
I think Alan Dowd, I believe he's a real estate developer. Is that correct?
I believe you're correct, yes.
Okay, so he runs for council. This is what these guys do. I'm going to come in, and I'm going to pass this legislation. Just like years ago, Comcast. You had Mayor Rendell, his chief of staff, David Cohn. Bam, Comcast has 2 buildings now. We have got to wake up. They're not going to fight for us. We don't need them in office. I know they're probably listening, and they throw out the little menial things they give to us. I don't know how they really lay their head down on their pillows at night and go to sleep. I really don't. And I'm going to say one more thing. Trade schools, right? Right now, the trade schools, they don't exist like they did before. I graduated from Dobbins many moons ago. Bach is gone. Everybody's back going to college. And quite frankly, thinking it over, having a trade, you make more than somebody with a degree in college.
Mm-hmm.
You spend all this money, get all this debt, and as for us as African Americans, I experienced it. You go for interviews, corporate America. Guys looking at me on the other side, oh, you graduated from Drexel University? I said, yeah, that's what my transcript said. You see my grades and everything. Oh, okay, I already knew I wasn't getting the job. And that happened on several occasions. So I came home frustrated. But we as a people have got to come together, grassroots, or whatever you want to call it, and get these people out of office and stop going for the okie doke and letting them throw us crumbs, and we're accepting it with a big smile on our face because they gave us a T-shirt with their name on it. Thank you.
You're welcome, and thank you, Gary. I mean, I have an idea. How about the instead of moving the students to occupy, the students at Ben Franklin who are displaced right now to occupy the school district headquarters building, how about they just trade places? How about everybody who works in the school district headquarters building at 440 North Broad? They should move into the Ben Franklin High School building while they finish cleaning up that asbestos and have all the students take over the entire 440 North Broad building in a safer environment. And see, they wouldn't want to trade places because they don't want to be breathing that asbestos in either. You know, I think if some people had to spend, if some of the adults who are in charge of our schools and the policies around the schools, if they had to actually sit in those classrooms or send their children into those classrooms and spend a lot of time in there, they would be appalled. And they wouldn't want to do it. Go ahead.
Yeah, we have to remember that the reason that this all started was that a teacher from Ben Franklin got diagnosed, forgive me, it might not be Ben Franklin, it was a school, got diagnosed with mesothelioma.
Right.
And that's really what began the snowball of looking at these schools and recognizing that Ben Franklin was not safe for teachers nor students to be in. But how many other schools do we have like this around the district? The school district of Philadelphia has 220 school buildings. How many of them, I mean, some of them are new. My alma mater built a new school a few years ago. I find it kind of interesting. It's in the Northeast. They built a new school building. But, you know, there are old buildings here that are in neighborhoods that probably need to be torn down and rebuilt. But they're in black and brown neighborhoods, might not be a priority.
I could go on and on about this. It really frustrates me. I'm with you, Gary. I'm frustrated. I think also just walking into some of the buildings, separate from the health issues in the buildings, but just the deterioration of the physical plant of the building, having your kids be in a building that is falling down around you, that doesn't have proper ventilation and heating and cooling for the different seasons of the year, how does that make a child feel about themselves? What message does that send to a child about how they're valued, how they're respected, their worth in our society, in our city? It's appalling that we treat children that way. Anyway, I could go on and on. So we didn't really get much time to talk about what's happening with the orange Cheeto in the White House.
Oh, Lord.
And the rapid, speaking of snowball effect, the rapid snowballing of the impeachment process that's happening and all of the stuff that's coming out. My understanding is today that the ambassador to Ukraine, who had been removed because she was upset at what Trump and Giuliani and his little cronies who just got arrested were trying to do there, that she testified all day today on Capitol Hill and spilled the tea, as they say. So I'll be curious to hear when we get off the air what came out about her testimony and what she was saying, because they didn't like her because she was actually trying to be a true diplomat, and they kicked her out. So I think she defied Trump. I think this morning ordered her not to go, and she said, "I'm going anyway." So hopefully that'll be a trend. Hopefully she's a trendsetter in that.
Yeah, I mean, she technically doesn't work for the State Department anymore. They fired her.
Oh, she did actually get fired? I didn't hear that part. So much is happening. I can't even keep up.
No, she got fired, I guess this was back in May.
I thought she just got demoted.
No, they actually removed her from her post. So,
but I think she still worked for the State Department. Anyway, I'm going to Google it right now.
Yeah, actually, I'm looking at her statement right here. It's actually online. I'm looking at it through Huffington Post. They posted her statement. Now, we should say that she testified behind closed doors today.
Mm-hmm.
So we do not know what the follow-up questions were that the congressional leaders asked her. But she released her statement.
Her opening statement, because they always give an opening statement.
Yeah, and it's about 10 pages. And she has served in this role for the State Department, well, in various roles for the State Department for the last 33 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so she was talking to the House Committee, the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, the Committee on Foreign Affairs, and the Committee on Oversight and Reform. And basically, I mean, I read through the whole statement that she said earlier. Basically, she said, I've talked to Rudy Giuliani 3 times in the course of my career. This guy was throwing me under the bus, don't know why. But she made it very clear that she felt that Giuliani and President Trump had people that they were associated with that were concerned about making sure that their financial needs were met in a corrupt Ukraine, and that even though Ukraine was moving towards trying to fight corruption, the fact of the matter was that there were people that didn't appreciate her blocking, some of their personal economic opportunities that was happening. She basically called out President Trump for recalling her, that the Deputy Secretary of State basically said to her point blank that there was a concerted effort, a concerted campaign to remove her from Ukraine, and that the president himself personally asked for her to be removed, that he felt like she had done nothing wrong. And that she should, he said, the Deputy Secretary of State basically said, I have had to remove people for cause before. This is the first time I've never had to remove somebody from a position without cause. But that, she acknowledged that as an ambassador, you only serve at the pleasure of the President of the United States. So the president wasn't pleased, and so she was removed from office. So,
well, yeah, she was recalled from her post. I think she's still technically employed by the State Department, but she definitely was removed from her post in Ukraine in May.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that this is, it's a very difficult situation. And, again, we don't know what the follow-up questions that the members of the House committees asked her because it was behind closed doors that this did take place. But basically, she called out Giuliani. She called out the president. She questioned, who was benefiting from this. And I'm sure that there were some more bombs that were dropped in the midst of that.
I'm quite sure, and I'm quite sure some of it's going to be leaked out to the press for sure.
Absolutely.
I mean, these guys are clowns, masquerading as mobsters, the way they behave in the Trump administration. Look, I'm going to read this. I got to read this announcement about the onWURD environmental racism event that's coming up. So let me do that, and then we'll wrap up with some final thoughts on the show and on anything else. Join Word Radio on October 20th from 2 to 5 p.m. at Bartram's Garden for an interactive conversation about environmental racism, how it impacts our daily lives, and what we as a community can do about it. Presenters include John Francis, author of Planet Walker and the Ragged Edge of Silence, Janine Kayumbe, founder of Life Do Grow Farm, Zuline Mayfield, Chester City environmental activist, Joanne Douglas, Youth River Program Manager at Bartram's Garden, and featuring a special musical presentation by Environmental Justice Band, Ill-Fated Natives. It's not just talk. You can also find out about job opportunities and resources as part of our Livelihood Job and Resource Fair. Some of the companies that will be on site include Serenity Solar, Brown's ShopRite, Clean Water Action, Pennsylvania Horticulture Society, and more. Additionally, we will debut Wasted, our eco-word photo exhibit by Zamani Feelings, looking at the trash crisis in our city. And we'll have a healing drum circle by Music Over Matter, with a special tribute to breast cancer survivors. Come out next Sunday, October 20th, from 2 to 5 p.m. at Bartram's Garden and learn how our community is uniquely impacted by climate change, locally, regionally, nationally, and globally. RSVP today at wordradio.com or call 215-425-7875. The onWURD Environmental Justice Summit is supported by the Wincote Foundation and Broken Philly, a project of Resolve Philadelphia. You know, I was at Bartram Gardens last weekend, and somebody there pointed out that it was the first time, you know, because right across the river from there is the oil refinery that is now shut down. And it's like it was the first time in over, how old is that plant? 100-some years? That plant was not spewing particulate matter into the air. So the folks I was with were celebrating that day. But Bartram Gardens is beautiful, so I hope people can come out to that event. It sounds really great. Final thoughts before we close out?
Well, I think we're in for a ride for the next few weeks, at least at the federal level, as we're watching what's going on. And I think we also we really need to tell folk to be paying particular attention to what's happening in city council races. A lot of people are expressing their frustration today with the leadership that we have right now, and I think they also need to be very aware to look out for all the candidates that are running. Not everybody is a Democrat or a Republican. There are other parties out there and candidates that are out there that can be really transformative for the city, and we need to make sure that those folk are paying attention to them as well.
That's right. So the Working Family Party candidates that are up for city council,
independent candidates too. Yeah,
and independent candidates, you can vote for 5 of the at-large. Is that how it works?
Yeah, you can vote for 5 at the at-large. I mean, what would happen if Philadelphians broke and said, look, we're not going to go with this two-party system anymore. It's not working for us. We're going to vote in candidates that really reflect our values and the best ideas of what we think for the city of Philadelphia. And this is an opportunity to do that. They're great candidates all the way around, and they can make their choice and make a statement. And that will actually be transformative to the Democrats in Philadelphia when they really realize they have to fight for votes in Philly.
Right, and we need a progressive caucus, a progressive progressive block on city council right now.
Absolutely.
So we have the opportunity to do that in just a few weeks. So that's a great point. I want to thank our guest, Eric Dobson from the Fair Share Housing Center of New Jersey, for speaking truth to power tonight about housing and what we can do here in Philadelphia. I want to thank our engineer extraordinaire, Troy Wilmore, for holding it down on the boards tonight. And I want to thank you, Bishop Royster, for joining, even though you're at the end of a very busy week on the road, joining remotely. Appreciate you and appreciate your ability to do that. And yeah, it's always great working with you. And I want to thank all of our callers, all of our participants on Facebook giving their comments. We appreciate you all, appreciate your voices and your sentiments. So thank you.
Thank you, Amadi. We appreciate you and your leadership and all that you're doing for Philadelphia. It's awesome.
Thank you so much. We will be back next week, 5 to 7 p.m. And up next is the Envy McKee Show. So thank you. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
We about to put it inside of a love perspective, like